I mean, I'm not saying that I don't see all the geopolitics and all the implications, but let's be realistic here. How do you produce, produce significant amounts of copper in the sizes that are necessary for the long term without the Chinese? Hey, we're back with another episode of the Deals podcast with your hosts, Lucho, Saenz, and Paola Rojas. Today, we'll talk about how copper supply estimates have changed over the last 3-4 months, in which projects in Argentina, Peru, and Ecuador could see the light at the end of the tunnel. We did take a kind of a longer break, but we're here. So, hi, Lucho, how are you?
Hey, Paola, good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah. We took a really long break with the podcast. We've been trying to get started for a month, but we're here now.
Yes.
So let's get started with the first topic, and we wanted to touch on what happened with Cobre Panama, First Quantum's projects in Panama, and we wanted to give a refresher and kind of talk about how the impact of this has, the changes that have happened after that. So, do you want to get started?
Yeah, I mean, just as a refresher, right? When we were starting the last quarter of last year, October-ish, around LME week, the mood was a bit somber. I mean, people were questioning copper and where it was going to go, etc. Somber turning to negative. Of course, by the end of the year, First Quantum's Cobre Panama was essentially shut down. There's the uncertainty of when it's going to come back. It's a huge production.
If.
In addition to that, if it comes back, and it's a huge production. On top of that, Glencore announced that they were going to be reducing about their guidance for 2025 has been reduced by about 60,000 tons. Just in the last week, Escondidas announced that their concentrator, Escondidas, the largest copper mine in the world. So the largest copper mine in the world, tells you there's a delay on something, it's going to attract attention. And that's the delay in taking the investment decision on their concentrator. Okay, and that potentially could take out 300,000 tons of copper for like 2027, 2028. Now, 300,000 tons of copper in 1 year, I mean, that's a mid-sized mine, right? So, I mean, yeah, that's significant. So, I mean, there's all this news that has come out that has led to a renewed optimism on prices, questioning the supply, looking at the supply balance, and that's, we're just starting to see, January, February, we've been seeing updates on the forecast of prices, and certainly a trend that the supply-demand balance is once again in a deficit, and Deutsche Bank in their last report already puts 2025 copper price at $10,000 per ton, and a long-term price of, I think, 9,400, 9,500. So, good news for copper prices and for copper mining, some of them at least.
Yeah, and the estimates, we tracked a few of those, and we'll put a chart that we have. We've seen Goldman Sachs change to a projected 500,000 tons per annum of deficit. Then Deutsche, it's about 300,000 tons. UBS, 73,000. Wood Mackenzie, 100,000. BMO, about 18. And then we still have Macquarie around 100,000 surplus, and the International Copper Study Group almost half a billion tons. But that's before what you were talking about, before the October sort of change. So they meet in April. So we'll have to wait until then to see what the new estimate is going to be, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be vastly different.
Don't forget that our good friends at Codelco are their production has gone down year on year. They have a lot of challenges on the production side. So,
Yeah.
again, Codelco is the largest copper miner in the world. Escondida is the largest copper mine in the world. First
Yeah.
Quantum was one of the largest mines. I mean, there are problems all over. And that's not, I don't want to sound happy about problems, but I think it brings us back to that optimism that we always had, that bullish trend that we had on copper that seemed to disappear for a brief moment at the end of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Um, this is just a side note, but do you have any thoughts on how, because most of these producers also do nickel, right? And the issues that nickel is having right now, I know BHP, it's not, nickel is not a big portion of their total production, but for First Quantum, I think it's a lot more significant. Do you have any like, do you think it could be sort of making the situation worse or better in any sense?
Well, I mean, there was a report that came out over the last couple of days that because of the fall, the huge fall in nickel prices over the last year. Let's not forget that a year and a half ago nickel was at $70,000. Now it's at $17,000 a ton, right? That
Yeah.
half of the world's production was underwater, right? I mean, the backdrop is not only on the price side. I was reading an article, a report, I think it was from VMO or one of those, about specifically to copper on the capital intensity, right? Just the escalation of costs all over the place, right?
Yeah.
And, capex increases from pre-COVID estimates, if you will, are expected to be up well over 20%. Okay, so if you're talking about a $100 million project, 100 to 120 million, it's not that big of a deal within the grand scheme of things. But when you're talking about a $3 billion project, right? I mean, adding another, 600 to 800 million dollars to that is a lot of millions. So I mean, it makes a lot of difference, a big difference in the financing structure, in the equity structure, and in simply making a decision of where to invest and whether you're going to invest. And that's central to the point that we wanted to talk about, the different countries and the projects that are out there, right?
Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
One
All right.
one interesting
So, yeah.
thing that I when I in this same article on the capex intensity, it was saying that, 2/3 of the projects that are in the pipeline today, if we put a list of the copper projects in the pipeline today, 2/3 of those were in that same pipeline 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, there are not there's very few new projects out there, right? And for a new project to make it, needs to have, it's a new discovery, but it has to have either a changing technology happen, or a discovery that is magnificent, higher grades, open pit, etc. So anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's a good segue into what we wanted to touch on about the three different countries and projects that have kind of, some have been in this pipeline for, as you said, quite a while. And what do we think about how they can progress, of what these changes, or the supply restriction, if we want to call it that, the changes in the supply can do. So we wanted to get started with Argentina. So we have, okay, so I have a few that I can mention, and then you can add on to that, or we can chat. So going back to the issue of seeing these large investments, kind of languish. Argentina has had issues, and we've talked a lot about that in the podcast and other places. Like my dad used to say that copper was going to be the thing for Argentina in the future, just because it's got the similarities with Chile, but it's bigger and it has more more land, obviously, more land, more potential for projects. So if we mention a few projects, and you may have some ordered in just a handful, but by size, there's Pachon, which is a project that is owned by Glencore, and Glencore has been doing kind of a few moves in Argentina recently. They keep moving forward. But as you said, in a very slow kind of burn. But the last time I checked, we're talking about 33 billion pounds. Billion tons would be nice. No, but 33 billion pounds at 0.47 of grade, so average grade. So that's significant. Then we have Los Azules, and a few of these, a good number of these, are in San Juan. And San Juan is very pro-mining, so the prospects of having a big mine in San Juan are, pretty good. They already have mines in operation. So you have Los Azules, which is a project that we worked on for several years. And this is about 10 billion pounds at 0.48%, and then 19 billion or so inferred and measured. So then you have Takataka, which is in north in Salta, and that's about 15 billion pounds. And then you have Aguarica, now called Mara. We've talked about that too. My dad worked on that. Then you have Altar. So this we can safely say that Argentina has pretty much 5 to 10 good big projects that could come into the pipeline, which would be a very different view, because Argentina had one copper mine, like one large copper mine, and it ran out. The mineral ran out. So what other, do you have any other thoughts on the Argentinian projects?
Listen, I mean, you gotta love how Argentina just bounces back. I mean, they don't just come back; they bounce back, and they bounce back with style, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Glencore might just be looking like a star right now if they take Mara ahead after just having consolidated only last year a shareholding that was dispersed for the last 15 years, right? I mean, it was in hands of one, the other, Northern Orion, right? I mean, between Alumbrera and Aguarica, I mean, Northern Orion, Yamana, Pan American, and now everything is with Glencore. It's under one very large producer who wants to grow, and Argentina is clearly open for business. For how long? I don't really know. Okay, I'm very involved in a project in Ecuador, and for us, I mean, trying to, the objective of building or starting construction during this administration, the current administration, is something key. And I think that's going to be the case with Argentina. I mean, if you're going to strike deals with the government, if you're going to strike deals with the communities and the districts, if you will, the governors, it's now. It's during the next 5 years of the duration of this government. You do have very large projects. Obviously, the larger the sponsor, the stronger the sponsor, the easier it's going to be, right? I mean, and the easier it will be to, this government is one that will definitely be interested in giving every opportunity and help to someone who's going to put in $5 billion, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like Mara. So that's an advantage. The disadvantage is that, it's not just about the central government. It's about the regional governments and what they want and what you're going to give them. And the region. I mean, in lithium, we saw it in Jujuy, right? I mean, you and I saw it. The province of Jujuy was very pro investment on the lithium side, partly because they benefited from a 5 or 8% basically carried interest.
7 or 8.
Project. And that ensured a pathway towards development, towards permitting and then development, right? And it's those kinds of incentives that make you want to get into Argentina at this particular time. a lot of talk about Argentina, a lot of excitement about Argentina. Definitely a place to look at, to keep your eye
Yeah,
on.
no, definitely. We've seen a change in interest, and there's more conversations happening, more people asking, new companies coming in. I see there's more people going to the Salta Hotel, which is, I don't know if you ever stayed there, but it's like this old, super old, traditional hotel.
Yeah.
We lived there for like a month when we moved, when I was a kid. It's a lovely hotel. It brings really good memories, not just of that time, but like coming back and meeting gringos, new clients who wanted to come and see. Yeah, it's a good place. All right, so then we wanted to go to your wheelhouse, go to Peru. So, what are the top projects that you think will kind of benefit of this situation or could benefit?
Well, I mean, the Peru pipeline has always been there, right? I mean, we've talked about this before. It's not, there's no novelty in that pipeline.
Mm.
We've had our share of good development or important developments in the last few years. I guess the latest one is Mina Justa, uh, and then Quellaveco, right? So, both of them with difficulty on the startup, particularly Quellaveco, social issues, and you've got some big projects out there, Michiquillay, which, there's a buzz going around, La Granja, where, First Quantum is involved. Um, but, you know, those two, for example, seem pretty far away. Um, there was a new mining minister that was appointed last week, I think. The guy, the new mining minister is a very well known, well respected uh, mining connoisseur. He's always been on the public's eye, and he knows about mining.
Mhm.
He had some, undersecretary positions before, but he's now the minister, and he's come out very vocal and saying that this government needs to focus on uh, promoting Tia Maria, which is a project that has been stopped because of community opposition, based on
Mhm.
environmental issues, um, but stopped on community opposition, and that's a project that Southern Copper has. Okay, and Mina Conga. Okay, with Conga, geez, Conga has been stopped because of social issues for longer than I want to remember. I mean,
Yeah,
at
very
least
long. Yeah,
10 years, maybe 15 years, right? And
yeah,
that's basically the copper deposit or the copper gold deposit below the Yanacocha, or next to the Yanacocha gold mine, right? I'm more
yeah.
interested in figuring out, what's going to happen with the Yanacocha sulfides, because that should be in
Mhm.
principle an easier project. But, I hear capex for that project is very, very high. So we're going to have to see, right? I love the enthusiasm. Not a big believer, frankly, even though I would love to see that. I mean, you're still talking about Peru, a country that's been through a couple of political issues only in the last couple of years, in the last year and a half. Okay, and we've got elections coming up. What I think in 2026, 2025, 2026, with no visible candidates still,
Mm.
in the arena. So, I mean, there is that level of uncertainty, but Peru, in the end, because the resources are here, and that's something that someone told me. We go where the resources are, and they are in Argentina right now, and things get better, and it gets hot over there. There's
Yeah.
there's still a lot to say for Peru, and its history of stability once you get into production.
Do you think, because the issue kind of, when with Peruvian projects, it tends to go always back to the social license problems, and the issues with communities. I know it's not your topic of specialty, but do you have any sort of criteria, or what in within, let's call it this, so within the different types of issues that the communities may have with projects, do you have any inklings or any idea, or when these issues are kind of easier? Like, do you have a feeling of which projects have easier issues to deal with within the social issues, or they're all kind of the same?
No project or company has it easy. Okay, I would say that there are some companies that have some of the projects that we've just mentioned, that because of their mismanagement of social community relations, um, are already at a disadvantage. They're already looked at badly. Okay,
Mm.
but no project is going to be safe from social issues, Paula. Unfortunately, in Peru, those problems are going to continue so long as the government doesn't do something about it. Okay, I
Mm.
mean, you have a social issue, the government turns a blind eye, um, tries to play around, dance around, ends up doing nothing, and the company needs to deal with the social issue, and that comes down to uh, time and money and patience. So that's when the optionality thing comes, and if you have the money but you don't really have the time, you're going to lose the patience very quickly, right? Then you're going to
Mm.
move somewhere else, and that's the
Mm.
risk that Peru has. That you know companies lose the patience and move on
Yeah,
to other
to
places.
something
Now,
else. Yeah.
the mid-size and small-size mining in Peru, it's booming, right? I mean,
Mm.
copper, with a copper price of $10,000, we're gonna have 1,000 small mines, okay,
Mm.
that are going to equate two large mines, okay,
Mm.
some two large Tuqueyabeco. I mean, I'm just making up the numbers, but the size is there. The size on the mid-size and small-size mining, which is going to continue one way or the other, um, is, uh, is still going to, the copper is still going to come out. But I mean, it's that $5 billion or $3 billion project that makes a difference in the GDP and in the investment and stuff like that. I mean, it's formal. It has a huge impact on any community, positive
Mm.
impact on any community. But
Yeah.
the government needs to go in and actively defend and promote the advantages of mining, and that unfortunately is not happening.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it's like, if you were able to create, many, or not create, but if many different mines come to start producing, and they go through the permitting processes, and they just manage things in a way that they can actually progress, and they like this the sector is evolving or adjusting to, okay, so the path of least resistance. So if the path of least resistance is going through the smallest side, reminds me of some people going back to the permitting issues and financing issues. In the US, you're seeing some companies go to underground mining just because the permitting for open pit is like too difficult to, so at least in one case, I can't remember the name now, but they're going through that pathway. So it's a good adjustment. All right. We wanted to talk about Ecuador, and a bit of the changes that we can see there, and some potential impacts with the restrictions on Chinese companies or Chinese investments into Canadian companies that we're seeing. So, do you want to start with that?
Ecuador is an interesting one because, I mean, the Ecuadorian government is very incentivized to bringing mining into the forefront, right? I mean,
Mm.
they see as a key source of revenue in the future, and depending on the government, they've had a couple of groups, a couple of governments being very pro, and really supporting what I was saying that doesn't happen in Peru, right? And it looks like, I mean, this new government, newly elected government, is actually that type of government. But in the last year, Ecuador become a bit of social, you know, a social hotspot, if you will, not only because of the communities, but also because of the violence and
Mm.
mafias and criminality and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
that obviously, detracts investors. But you have some good projects, but you don't have a huge amount of projects. Okay, so those projects that are advancing, you want to make sure that they advance properly, right? And everyone puts as an example Fruta del Norte, and they forget that Fruta del Norte, you know, was a very difficult birth, if you will. Okay, and you don't want to see that again. I mean, and
Mm.
you have this potential investment, Chinese investment in Solaris, but the word in the street is that it's going to be blocked by the Canadian regulators because
Yeah.
it's a Chinese investment in basically taking over um, uh, um, a Canadian company, right? But it's in
Yeah.
Ecuador, so I'm not really sure how. I mean, it's a problem. I mean, if you start facing those kinds of situations, you're taking out one of the major players in the commodities market forever. They've forever been a
Mm.
major player. They will forever be a major player, and you're taking them out of the game, right? And that just makes it more difficult to deal in it, to deal with. Ecuador has some good projects, and you know, but you have this window with this government to really take them through. It would be a pity if those investments, that investment desire, doesn't move forward. Okay, because in the end, the Canadian regulators might be talking about the Canadian company, but the effect of the investment is in the Ecuadorian population, right? In the Ecuadorian
Mm.
society, and that's where you want to see the money flow through.
Absolutely. I think, um, yeah, it's tricky. Like it's hard to see a sector and well, a subsector within mining in general, but it's hard to see how, especially for these large investments. So copper is probably the most impacted. It's hard to see it move forward without the Chinese. Like, they have big pockets and they need a lot of copper. Like, how are you gonna work around the fact that, like, if you want to keep them out of all of um, these investments, it's gonna be tricky to find other sources of such big capital,
No,
I
and
think.
and listen, I mean, and we can sort of. I mean, we started talking about Cobre Panama, and let's finish talking about First Quantum, right? I mean, with all of the doom and gloom around the Cobre Panama, you know, disaster, not to say another word, but uh, last week First Quantum announced the restructuring of their financing, an amendment, an extension of
Insane.
their
Yeah.
$2.2 billion financing, $1 billion of an equity raise, right?
It's
And a
big
$500 million
package.
prepayment from the Chinese, from
Yeah.
the Chinese against
Yeah.
the copper that's going to be coming out from Zambia. Okay, I
Yeah.
mean, if that's not a vote of confidence in the copper market and the future of the copper market, I don't really know what it is. What is, right? And you've got to take that into consideration. That if Canadian companies cannot access that Chinese money, okay, because they're Canadian, then it's the Canadian companies that are going to lose out because that Chinese money is going to find itself somewhere else.
Exactly. Yeah. They're gonna go somewhere where their capital is accepted, and that could really change the kind of landscape of copper in general, because you need them. Like, it's hard to, I mean, I'm not saying that I don't see all the geopolitics and all the implications, but let's be realistic here. How do you produce significant amounts of copper in the sizes that are necessary for the long term without the Chinese? It's just, I don't see it happening anyway.
It's also about risk appetite, right? I mean, you know, the Chinese have the the requirement, the need, and they have the risk appetite, and they are, you know, it's a
Long
centralized
term,
government. It's pretty much
bloody
a
long
one
term.
man show that decides we're going to be thinking 50 years forward, and that means that we start buying now, and it doesn't matter what it costs, and that goes through cycles. I mean, the Chinese
Yeah.
There was a time when they paid whatever, whatever price to it, and that's no longer the case. But they can still
Yeah.
sell out the big tickets now. Again, I mean, people, you know, a number of very large institutions shelled out $1 billion in fresh equity for First Quantum. Okay, and that's
Yeah.
because despite the issues around Cobre Panama, they see First Quantum as a premier growing producer with other projects in their pipeline, and they're
Yeah.
going to get they're going to
Yeah.
do something because they've
Yeah.
proven that
Yeah.
they've been
No.
able to do something.
Absolutely.
So,
Massive
I
package.
guess,
Massive
I
package.
mean, that just means that, copper's back, the attention's back, and we got to watch this space. And, we'll be talking about that, I'm sure, in future episodes. But we'd like to hear
Yeah.
from the audience, see what they think about what we're talking about, and, questions, topics, etc. We're back in business.
Yes, exactly. So we're back. We're gonna be doing back again. We've committed to doing 2 episodes per month. So you're more than welcome to hold us accountable. All right. So that was a lovely, lovely. Lovely return, and we're gonna be back in 2 weeks. So let's see each other very soon, and well, I'll see you sooner than that. But I mean the audience, not you.
We will.
Oh, all right, all right, all right,
All right.
everybody.
Thanks, Paula.
Bye. Lucho and I will be back in 2 weeks. Until then, here's another related episode you may like to watch next. Bye.